All right, I think we are live. Hi, guys. Welcome to the first episode of Random Table. I am here with three of, I think, the greatest referees online running games right now. If you guys want to introduce yourself, Dunder Moose.
Yo, what up? It's your boy, Dunder Moose. I don't know why I say that. You're not my parents, but I feel like when the camera comes on, you just get silly. I'm excited to talk to these folks about a topic that is raising a lot of stuff on Twitter. I asked you guys about it. Some of you shared, so that's going to be part of what we're talking about later on tonight, whatever time of day it is for you in your part of the world. We're gonna talk. You're gonna get all of our takes on the topic. We're gonna talk about some research that's been done into it, and finally, we're gonna end up with some how-to tips. So stick around for the whole show. You're going to love it. If you ever want to check me out, I'm also on YouTube at This Is Dunder Moose. And Scooter for Mike. I'm sorry. Scooter for Mike. You go next.
Yeah, hey guys, it's Scooter for Mike. We're back. If we're just here to talk about PvP today and the cruelty that Harmony Ginger brings to the table. I want everybody to check out the poll on Twitter. We need to identify who the villain is. It's choice A. That's all there is to it.
All right, I need to. There was a in the chat. They said Scootifer with a question mark, and I need to defend myself.
It is Scutifer, Mike.
Okay, how do you pronounce the devil? Do you call him Lucifer?
How do you pronounce giraffe? Do you say giraffe?
I say giraffe.
Vowels and consonants are not the same thing.
I say Lucifer. I feel like I just had a bad vowel movement on camera. Let's throw it to Night Danger.
It rhymes with butt. Scut.
Pounds Cleveland. No, we're gonna fight. It's already going PvP, y'all.
Oh, we're going down.
It's over. Well, and then I guess finally there's me, Night Danger, certified protagonist of reality and the undisputed smartest Canadian on Earth. This is exciting for me. I've never done a live stream before. I'm not outdoors. I'm in my basement.
There's no mosquitoes.
I can't smoke in here. It's
oh, I should have brought my string cheese.
You should have brought the cheese string, you animal.
Now I'm wishing I had string cheese. Well, we want to kind of start out talking about the experiences we've had injecting PvP into our RPG games. Ooh, RPG games. ATM machine. Oof, that's bad.
Yeah.
Into our RPGs. Starting with Mike, who has a story to share because I know he recently had a very negative experience with PvP and he is here to cry about it.
Oh, I brought my tissues, okay? I've got my Kleenexes right here. All right.
I'm sorry, guys. This is getting. I need to take this ridiculous thing off.
It's probably really hot. You're like trapping all that heat. Yeah.
Go ahead.
So I have several grievances, and I've written them all down. So let's start with the first one. When we're on a little planet, it's a gas planet, not too big, just run by a few barons. We're all guests here. The planet is named Moonshine. We know that it's a dangerous place. We can't go alone. We unite. We make... Oh, there's a cat. Awesome. We make an alliance of 4 people. 3 of which are in this room. Plus Ardos. Sorry, Night Danger, you weren't there.
I don't play online.
We committed to protecting each other and going out and handling this quest in the jungle. Before we get in the car, Dunder Moose starts murdering everyone. He didn't ask permission. I did not. He ignored my X card when I said this makes me uncomfortable. I don't feel safe when I play.
He was tapping that X like he was
game.
trying to skip a cutscene.
I don't feel safe whenever I engage with other players, and then it turns out that they had their own motivations the entire time, Which may or may not be contradictory to my own, and then they attack me for it. I don't like that. That's instance number one. Should we pause here, discuss, or do you want me to get into all of them? Because I could A, B, C, D all the way down the line.
Go on.
Please continue.
Next up, okay, I'm like, all right, fine. We'll try again. We're on a new planet. Classic traveler, you know? Just trying to make our way in the world. I'm helping out, okay? I'm going to make myself useful to everyone. I'm going to give them gold or credits because they're poor. I'm going to give them an objective because they're aimless. They have no idea what they're doing. Number 3, you know what I'll do? I will give safe haven on my compound, my massive mansion, to a poor little alien girl. She's just a little orphan. She needs help. And her name? ShamWow. Oh, don't worry about ShamWow.
She was an
ShamWow's
adult.
a sweetie little friend. Just a little blue friend, little avatar, 7 feet tall.
She
I'm
had
like,
a lot
okay,
of
fine. Whatever you need. Whatever you need. Oh, you're trapped on the planet? Well, you've come to the right place. I am here to help you. I get them off planet. They were trapped there. They had no options. And as soon as they use me for everything I'm good for, what is it that Harmony Ginger does? If you saw the video, you know. Betrayed me while I was sleeping. Again, I never said it was okay to engage in player versus player combat. I did not give you my consent. I think that's enough for me.
To respond to these allegations, I think it is a possibility that nobody has ever thought about, that maybe Flynn's body just did that. Maybe he just sucked it in and it just happened, and poor little ShamWow saw it happen and then ran away because she was scared that it could happen
You're
to her.
gaslighting. You're gaslighting the chat right now.
I think you just need to get good at Traveler, bro.
Right. I'm sorry, this is hard to keep a straight face.
You know what? You're right. I need to take this ridiculous thing off.
No, I love PvP at the table. I think it's awesome whenever. Okay, so I do like to pretend that I'm innocent in all this, but to be fair, you know, my power player, he wasn't exactly the nicest guy in the world, but he was nice to the PCs. But I think they saw right through his facade. And I think it's important for people to realize that, you know, if you're role playing, if you're doing your job with your character and you know who they are and what they want, there is zero shot that it is not going to bounce up against the other people at the table.
That's probably true. So I think when people talk about PvP, a lot of them think of like a group game where a magical sword, they find a magical sword and someone kills the rival so that they can take the magic sword. Like, that's what I think a lot of people think of when they think PvP, and they're like, this is not what I want at my table. And that's not really what I think of, and that's not really what my experience has been. Though I don't deny there have been some experiences I've witnessed with ridiculous player deaths at the hand of other players. I've never lost a character. I've never had a character die in an RPG by the hands of anything but another player. Every character death I've ever had was at the hands of another player. True story. Yep.
So I want to hear from both of you then. How did it make you feel when you realized you were in a PvP scenario? And how did it make you feel when you lost your character?
Harmony, you want to go first?
Well, one of them was years ago, and it was we like killed this black dragon, and one of the party members was like, surprise, I'm a secret vampire and I'm gonna kill Harmony now. It was kind of funny at the time because I just wasn't expecting it. I don't know. I wasn't upset about it. It was a weird twist. But I'm not sure if it's the ideal for PvP, and I probably would not be happy if that happened in a game that I was running. But yeah, no, that was
So you didn't
was
know
an
it was going to
experience.
be PvP until it was, and then it was
No,
too late.
no,
Okay.
I
And so
didn't.
you would say that sucked, or
Um,
was it fun?
I think in retrospect, it was funnier than it was at the time. I actually think at the time it was kind of
Mm.
shocking. I was like, oh, this was an option.
Hmm.
Oh, okay. And thinking back, it's kind of a better experience than it was at the time. Night Danger, do you have any positive or negative experiences with this in the past at your tables?
Well, okay, hold on. So I had the immense luxury of I've been playing with the same group in real life for the past since 2009, so however many years that is. And when we were middle schoolers, when we were idiots and young, and PvP was just a natural course because the DM tells you that you can do anything you want, and you can do you have total autonomy. And so naturally, there's always one guy who gets like, well, I have a pickpocket skill. I'm going to use it to systematically loot magic items from all the other members of the party anytime they're sleeping. And inevitably, that character gets caught and beheaded by the paladin. This was the course of action when we were younger, and then as we started to get into high school and start to stabilize, there was this unspoken code where you don't split the party, you don't do PvP, you get along because we don't want to spoil the game by just fighting all the time. And it was a move away from the obnoxious, but admittedly, it was also a move away from the interesting. And when I started DMing, it was great. It was 2015, so 5th Ed had been out for about a year, and I ran a campaign that lasted, we played every week for a year, and there was only one instance of PvP, and it really was player versus player. It was not character versus character, but it was motivated by character actions, in that there were only 2 characters left who lived, because despite all its reputation, you can kill player characters in 5th edition. Most 5th Ed DMs are simply too weak and afraid to do what must be done to kill their players. So there was only 2 characters who were original, like they'd been there since the first session, and they'd managed to survive their whole the whole campaign. And one of them was a very good and noble and just, upright person, and the other one was devious and treacherous and underhanded. And of course, I'm just pulling out at this point, as any 5th Ed game is wont to do, ratchet up the scale of magic. You're throwing magic items out left and right. Bigger and bigger monsters, cosmic scope. The universe hangs in the balance, and this evil character gets his hands on the Hand of Vecna. We're in my friend's basement, and we've been playing for about 7 hours. And the player of the good character, whose house it was, he was hosting, goes on out of the room for a moment, and he returns with an actual sword. Because, nerd houses, they have swords, and they have... And he proceeds
It's not
to
a replica.
swing...
Was
he
it
proceeds
sharpened?
It was reasonably sharp. We'd used it on some, cantaloupes and whatnot. And he pulls it out, and he holds it up over his hand, and he swings it most of the way at the hands to diegetically threaten the evil character. And then it broke into a combat encounter, and dice were rolled. But it was an immersive experience. It was motivated by character actions, and there was no hard feelings. Everyone was having a good time. But not only did I have character versus character, I had a fully diegetic weapons drawn PvP. Uh, so
And a lot of
I
times,
don't know.
oh,
That is crazy.
That's my story. I have other stuff about recent endeavors with Braunsteins and faction play and how that integrates, but I think maybe for now I've talked enough and someone else should say something.
I think the normally what I generally am talking about is more indirect PvP, where the players are together kind of by necessity at the start, and everybody does have the same goals at the start. Your goal is to save the kidnapped child and get gold and money and, you know, treasure, and everyone sort of starts with the same goals. But as the game progresses and characters get stronger and gain retainers and they are capable of more things, that's when people's goals diverge. And I think that there are two big different philosophies here as to how to handle them. And I think the book that Dundermoose recommended to me, what was it called? Treacherous Play?
Treacherous Play by Marcus Carter.
Yeah, I think he hit on something when he was saying that the two big philosophies are really the World of Warcraft versus the EVE Online philosophies. And I'm sorry to people who don't play video games here, but the World of Warcraft philosophy is that this is not what they are called. This is just what he was talking about in the book. But it's you know, you have your group that you're questing with, and you cannot, the rules of the game prohibit you stealing from them. They prohibit you killing them. You have to work together. The rules of the game do not support like PvP with somebody on your same faction. Whereas the EVE Online philosophy is everybody chooses to work together. However, if we go out and we're going to mine an asteroid, I can kill you and come back to the group and say, oh yeah, it was a pirate that got him. And they may be none the wiser. And so that's a game that supports treacherous play, as opposed to something like World of Warcraft that doesn't. And I think those were really good examples for illustrating the difference here in what we mean. Because see, the thing is, in EVE Online and other games like that, like what's that, Rust and Ark and stuff, those games don't necessarily mean, like, those rule sets don't mean that players are going to attack each other. It means they can attack each other. And I think that there is something major that is brought to a game when players can, even if they don't, just because it adds tension.
I think that's an interesting point. What we're finding online, and I think a lot of the interactions we had in Dunder's X post was around the idea of like whether it belongs at all. I think it's hard for players, just players in general, to accept that it's even possible, because in the rules, like if you're opening up like 5th edition rulebook, it says like this is a cooperative game versus the dungeon master who will control the bad guys. And I think the concept of like what they're visualizing as PvP is we're gonna be in the dungeon. We're both going to reach for the ruby at the same time, and then we're going to stab each other. It's going to be a really quick game because we're going to have 5 minutes of combat, and then everybody's dead except for maybe 1 or 2 people, and then the game's over. How do I reconcile that with what my understanding of D&D is, which is I'm playing for several levels over a period of months, and we grow more and more powerful, and we conquer the bad guy, right? So I think it's about reframing the argument a little bit.
I also think people enjoy PvP more than they think they do.
That one's huge. like people like it. This is the thing. When I was trying to introduce faction play and engaging in cross interest in Braunstein play to my players, a big part of the explanation was, remember how fun it was to behead your shifty thief compadre when you were 13? Remember, like the paladin to the thief? Or remember how fun it was to get away with stealing from another player? How exciting that was. At this point, we're not going to punish you socially for it. I want you to try and get one over on each other. and I want you to try and outperform each other, because your in-character interests are not aligned.
You
And
know,
as
that's
soon as I explained it like that, they're like, oh, everything I thought was cool when I was 13 actually was cool. And I just have to like let myself enjoy that.
that's a really interesting point because so I had a couple of players. Oh, so let me start at the beginning. When I introduced the idea of a Bronstein to my players, and I was like, the entire purpose of this is for you guys to be at ends with each other. There's going to be one clear winner. Half of the players were like, this is going to be so cool. I love this idea. And then the other half, they spent the entire Bronstein hiding from everyone else, like playing this kind of like mini game where there was like no PvP combat. They're like, we're just going to hide over here and like try to achieve this own objective. And whenever B-Dubs and who else did that? It was the real Stevenson guy.
Bob Stevenson.
Whenever they,
Bob the heel.
yeah, whenever. Right, the heel Stevenson. Whenever
Bob
they were doing the grading, they actually mentioned how like they're like a lot of these guys would have gotten more points if they would have actually engaged in PvP because so many of the players were just hiding and doing the get along gang thing, you know. So I mean, I think it's a challenge and like really like can your players open up their minds to the idea of it?
I don't think. I think that even that group that was going away and doing the get along gang and just playing a normal game of whatever system you were using, I'm not entirely sure, but I think the PvP aspect may have enhanced that because a lot of times the ability, the fact that the option exists makes the game better, even if it never occurs, because it puts people on edge, especially if they're getting slightly different information each week. They don't know who they can trust. They form alliances. Oh, I'm going to say something really controversial that's going to okay, if you thought I wasn't a bro before, I'm going to say the most unbro thing ever here. I think that Bronstein play or Bronstein adjacent play has actually been very popular for a long time under other names. And I think if you want a good example of the play dynamics that games with PvP enabled can produce, I think a good place to look at that is reality TV. I think Big Brother, Survivor,
The Challenge,
the Netflix, that one, the Netflix show, The Trust. I think those are very, very Bronstein adjacent at some point.
I mean, the idea that like you have to form alliances and like there's op factions, you know, like I saw like a little bit of that. Yeah, there is like in reality TV for sure.
Well, I mean,
okay,
that's chapter 4 of the book is Survivor. So
is it really? I haven't gotten there.
Teaser for later.
Nobody reads. Nobody reads.
I read chapter 1. You gave it to me yesterday.
I think what's really interesting is in my home game, it's an always on battle Bronstein. Like I do my best to push my players and they are opposed to, like some of them are opposed to the idea of it in general. But what I think that PvP does, you're saying like just having it on the table creates better play. I think that you're right because one of the guys who hates PvP, he despises the idea that he's not like the main character. He has a very high level magic user and he's like, I don't want to do PvP because I will die in 2 seconds. And so what he's done is he's taken his magic user way far off the map into the middle of nowhere. And he's building his magic user keep. And he's become this secluded, arcane, crazy wizard out in the middle of nowhere. And he would never have been forced to do that had he not feared that all these fighters were going to come and steal all of his magic items. And so I think that like that fear that somebody's coming for him at any time has pushed him to role play better, because before that he was just living in town at the inn with everybody else, you know, with like the chest full of magic items. And I'm like, that's not really what a wizard would do, right? Like they would go off by themselves and do arcane experiments. So
we have our first super chat.
I'm very sorry to say I have to read the super chat.
Oh,
do it.
That's the wrong one. I didn't. There
Of
we
course,
go.
no, just put my comment up. My comment is better.
You're
This
commenting
is
with the button.
literally why we don't let women in. Just stop. Thank you, tag for the $5.
I feel like I'm out of the loop on this one. As a child, we were always a reruns on DVD sort of family, and so live television just never crossed into the threshold.
I
don't know.
still
I
feel like I'm
I-
this conversation is getting very serious, and I feel like I just need to take this ridiculous thing off. So
So the so if I'm understanding correctly, I was always told like that like reality shows like Survivor and stuff are scripted, but there is still the structure of like concealing information, and I don't know. I feel
They might be scripted. I don't know.
I would love to comment on this subject, and I'm out of the loop.
Mm. So the idea that like
maybe the issue
there
is
can
that
only be one winner, and there's going to be a group of contestants, and they're going to compete in different challenges, whether it's like a fighting in the dungeon or climbing up a rope really quickly. But more than like what they're capable of, like they have to be really good at the political game. And what I've found at my table is the players who are very popular in real life do a very good job of making allies in the game, because and I think that's true also with the Bro SR, is like there are these very powerful personalities who will command respect just because they're playing a character in the game, and people will try to kill them right away because of who they are and what they've done in other games. They're like, we have to kill Dundermoose right away because
probably for the best.
He's going to turn it. He's going to kill everybody in any time now. It's coming when we least expect it, when it's least logical, when everybody's firing Uzis at us. That's when he's going to turn. So like I think that the personalities, like
you and I remember that very differently.
Well, I was there, so actually that was my favorite PvP experience. And
really,
there's nothing even that comes close to it. Every time we've tried to replicate it, it has fallen short, and I think it's because we changed the style of play that we did. So the play by post was the best system for PvP for us because, and
more
I think it was
immersive
even better
than an in session.
Yeah, absolutely.
Wow.
Because the whole time, here's what I was doing. Like, I'm not being sarcastic. I was just like, oh my gosh. And I'm like trying to do other things, and I'm looking at my phone. I'm like, oh my God, I can't believe. Okay, so what is he going to do? And then there's everybody's got their own back channel. So we were able to like whisper to each other kind of. And that's just something that doesn't happen at the table in a way that's very easy because like the whole time it's like, okay, I'm going to go off into this room over here and talk to this other guy. Everybody's like, oh, okay,
meet me in the kitchen for a minute.
Right. Like they're going to turn on us now. But when R-Dubs and I were like, what do we do? Like, are you going to stand with me? I was like, dude, I'm going to stand tall, bro. I'm with you. And then the whole time Harmony's like, look, he's not going to kill you. Just don't do anything crazy. It's all right. And then you're like, you and I were just chatting, Dundermoose and I, we were just chatting in the main group. And you were just like, look, I'll drop my guns once we're clear. And I'm like, I can't do this. And the whole time I'm checking my phone, and like the intensity, the emotion I was feeling, it was so much excitement. And I think that was because we were playing through text. There was enough time for us to process what we were reading. And then it was giving Jeffro enough time to like adjudicate everything. And then there was the tension of waiting.
If you'd have just
for that
kept your cool,
line.
we would have found the scout, man.
Well, maybe. Yeah, probably would have. But yeah.
There's another super chat.
Guys, we got another super chat.
Another one.
Thank you so much, Michael, for the $10. Where's my killer stash? Dundermoose is killing it with a disguise. Dundermoose, I think you need to take that ridiculous thing off.
All right, fine. I'll take this ridiculous thing off.
I like Michael, actually. He's the cool dude. He's on X. I think I know that guy. Yeah.
Thanks for the $10, Michael.
Yeah, no, he's great. Thank you so much.
I think you guys are onto something with the always on but not in session not hostile but competitive gaming being deeply enthralling. I got complaints from my players' wives when we started running the always on faction game. My wife was visiting with the wife of one of my players, and I come upstairs to get a cup of coffee, and my buddy's wife, she looks at me, she says, "You've stolen him, you know? He's sending orders. He's checking to make sure he's not being betrayed at every other moment." But I do think that there does at some point there will have to be a distinction between immersion and engagement. Just because thinking in character and acting in character is not the same thing as being unable to escape thoughts of the game. Being immersed, or in the sense of being sucked in and having the game be all that you think about, is different than being immersed in the sense of really thinking with and engaging with what is occurring in the game world. I won't use the F word. I won't use the F word in fiction because that's story gaming language. But I won't. But I think that distinction is worth making.
I think for me, like what I value more is engagement over immersion. But when we're at the table, I want immersion. But
yeah, I agree with that.
Dungeon Master, like I want to see my players like high level of engagement. I want them to be texting me their downtime stuff. I want them to be asking each other questions and, like genuinely doubt the trusts and the alliances that they're building. Because once that engagement's there, when they get to the table, I think they are, they are like locked in.
I've got the chat here. I'm gonna have to fist fight Brian Renninger in real life. Immersion isn't even a real thing, he says. I was immersed in a game you were running. I was experiencing immersion as I define it in a game that
I learned it from
running.
you, Dad.
How are you even gonna say that that's not real when you produced it, my man? That's a fist fight. That's on site.
You.
These Americans, man, they keep pressing me. They keep pressing me.
Brian may have a point that engagement and immersion are not quite the same thing. Do you necessarily need immersion for engagement?
Yeah, I mean
that's the whole point that I was making, is that engagement and immersion are different. But what I was experiencing in Brian Renninger's game was immersion, and I understand that they're distinct. But he's telling me it's not real. No, that's
okay. So for immersion or engagement, what would you say the impact of knowing that there's PvP? Does that hurt your engagement or enhance it? Does that harm your immersion or enhance it? And it doesn't have to be they both go in the same direction, right? Like one can go up the other.
Honestly, I think that's the most important question we should be addressing today, because I think it's really multi-layered. There's a lot of aspects to this, but I want to talk about one in particular. Having this possibility for players going at each other has been pretty brutal to the engagement level in my game. I have 14 people who rotate in my living campaign, and now we're down to 5. I lost a lot of people at the idea that like they were no longer going to be like get along gang. They liked and they will argue with me till they're blue in the face. They come to D&D to be on a team, and that's what they want. They don't want to play where somebody's goals are directly, opposed to theirs. And like participation dropped way off. But the 5 that show up, I mean, sometimes it's more, but the 5 that show up consistently are very invested. That's all they can think about. It's all they want to talk about. We're playing. I think what we did was like we took like everybody showing up when they could, because that's really what one-to-one time, the biggest benefit for my game is that it's like, whoever can come can show up, and there's going to be a game no matter what. What we took was like we brought out like the excitement level for those few people, and now we have a game every week, and it's the same people, which is something I've always wanted but was never able to really do before, and now we can do. But you lose something in the fact that now all I get is downtime requests from a
Mhm.
majority of my team.
So would you say that PvP is almost like a gatekeeping mechanism, that like of the people that enjoy the hobby, there's a small slice that really enjoy it and the rest really don't. And so by using it, you're going to filter for just a certain kind of player. Is that a fair
Maybe,
statement?
I mean, that's what happened for me. I don't know if that's what other people are experiencing, but I think that a majority of people do not want to engage in player conflicts, because what they're envisioning is not a fighting class. A fighting man should be fighting other fighting men. Like, I don't see how you can rectify, like, it's in the name, they fight, but from a player's perspective, they're investing a lot of time in the idea of growing this thing, and they see combat as it's over quick and then your character's gone forever. I don't know, like, it's too, I think it's really complicated and there's a lot of different aspects to it, but most people don't want that, I would say.
I would
So
disagree.
here's
Okay.
go on.
I'm going to have
I would
Danger
say-
go first and then Harmony.
Yeah, sounds good. I'll say that I think that it needs to be a cooked-in assumption from the start. Like, people need to be aware that it's a possibility that PvP could happen. But not only that, but I'd say that in order to have a meaningful role-playing at all, in order to have character agency, in order to have immersion, in order for this to be possible at all, it needs to be on the table that I can decide that my character wants to kill your character and take his stuff. It's unlikely, because here's the thing: is that, like, most games have fairly deadly combat, especially amongst peers, right?
Yeah.
And so character versus character. Mr. Max, Reactionary Principle Gaming, I see him in chat right now, saying character versus character can and should be so much more than combat. This is very much the case where I should have cross interest with the party if it is within the paradigm of the character that I'm playing. And if that's not available to me, if there are things that I'm not allowed to do, then I don't really have agency. I really agree with Black Lodge on this, that if you identify invisible walls within your campaign world, the only act of genuine player agency is to destroy them, to act against them. If I'm not allowed to decide that I want to start spying on another player, on another character, on another player character, let's clarify. If I want to undermine them, if I want to report an evil character to the authorities, if that all needs to be available to me. As soon as you artificially create this get along gang structure of passive aggressively forcing people to only play characters that get along with each other, you completely destroy any meaningful agency that the characters can have. And the game can only be, at this point, just play a board game, like play Pandemic or something. If you don't want the option to do whatever would make most sense for the character, why are you even playing RPGs? There are so many other mediums that would do a better job of what you want than this particular activity.
Sorry, go ahead, Harmony.
Yeah, I was going to say something so similar, but I think that Black Lodge Games quote is really, really good. My only rule about PvP in my games is you are expected to be an adult about the consequences of your actions. That's really it. And if you want to murder the fighting man in his sleep and take their sword, you are welcome to do so, but the party's going to turn on you and you deserve it, and I'm not going to step in. And you need to be an adult about it. But I think that the dissolution, I think that's the word, of these barriers is a good thing, because it allows for deeper role play. Because if you want to be a good character and not harm other players and not harm, like, this even has to do with alignment as well. If you want to be a good character, it is a deeper form of role playing to be a good character in a world where you are not forced to be a good character. If you are choosing to be a good paladin and not harm your friends, then that is a choice you are making, and that means more and is actually role playing rather than you can't harm your friends and these barriers are there that are going to prevent you from being evil. And I believe in that. I believe in player agency there.
I think that touches into like life philosophy too. Like there's so much more than there's like when you're playing role playing games, there's a big reflection on like how you live your life as well. Because like you could pass a law saying, you know, like you don't do this and you don't do that, but like the choice that you make to not do those things defines who you are. Not, you know, well, it's illegal, you know, like it's against the rules, right? But
like
there was
it's
something
illegal
that
to litter, but also you should just not do it anyway.
right? Just don't do it because you're, you know, you
Well,
make that choice.
Well, time out, guys. Now we're getting.
Are you going to defend littering right now?
I'm
time out beyond that.
I'm gonna say that we're getting into some interesting territory where we have the capability of. So how does a game allow you to try out stuff that maybe you don't do in real life? How does it let you be somebody that maybe you aren't, right? And so I think one of the objections to PvP is it comes down to that betrayal. And you will see this in Survivor, and you'll see this in the book as well.
Oh yeah.
The skills that I would use to deceive somebody in one of these games are very similar to the skills that I would use to deceive people in real life. So it begs the question, if I can do that in the game, what does that say about me as a person outside of the game? Right? And
Actually,
you'll see this. You'll see this in Survivor and Final Tribal Council, right? Like people will say, you got there because you betrayed and you must be an awful person in real life. And you'll see them develop these. And again, these aren't all my ideas. This is Marcus Carter that I'm reading here. So please don't think I'm a genius. I'm just processing. They develop smaller internal identities that say, well, in real life, I'm trustworthy and upstanding. But when I'm playing the game of Survivor, which is basically a game where everybody's an enemy, and you have like deceiving people and getting them to think you're voting one way and doing something else is how you win the game. That you create this smaller identity within yourself says, well, this is a game and I can try this on. I can play this in a safe area, and the fact that it's a game makes it okay to do this. And then if you're doing something like shooting people in Halo or whatever, no one gets mad when they get shot in Halo because you're playing to get shot in Halo, right? Or shoot them. But in a game like this, where it's like I, in character, am also borrowing on certain connections that we may have or may want to have with each other, you know, it gets so mixed up. And like now my character in the next Traveler, there'd be no reason for your characters to mistrust them, but you remember that Dunder guy screwed me up something fierce and I gotta punish him for doing that so he knows not to mess with me again. So Night Danger, you had something you wanted to say. I didn't want to get too far before you got it out.
No, yeah, I think that there's something to this. If we abstract it out to other games that don't have a role-playing element, they're just games. Say we're playing backgammon. If I consistently, I hope everyone here knows how to play backgammon. If we're playing backgammon, and I'm consistently putting your hit, if I have the choice between putting one of your landing on one of your pieces and putting it up on the bar, or just continuing on with trying to cash out my chips, so to speak, if I'm consistently knocking you down, it's not because I'm an evil person, or because it's because I want to win the game. I've had to have this conversation with my lovely wife. If I'm mean in backgammon, it doesn't mean that I'm a mean person. And if she's a horrible, evil, treacherous diplomacy player, that doesn't mean that she's a bad person in real life, right? Like these games require, in order to produce the style of gameplay that is satisfying and engaging and challenging and competitive and interesting. Oh, pause 1 second. in order to produce gameplay that is interesting and exciting, you have to be willing to engage in this sort of treacherous gameplay. And if you're a good guy, that very nice, Jeffro. You have to be you have to be able to engage in this. And I don't know. I think that there's something to the fact of it's difficult. It's a social skill that has to be developed and cultivated. It's a socialization issue to be able to finish the game of diplomacy or finish the Bronstein or finish the backgammon round and not carry a grudge about the behavior that occurred in game onto future games.
Right.
And this is why so I think it was Dundermoose was hyping this show up a little bit, asking people for their opinion on PvP. And in one of those threads, I said something, which is that the ability to engage in PvP is a social grace that is outside the purview of the rules, which is that in order to do it effectively, and in order to yield the benefits of having competitive play in your RPG table, it requires you to be well socialized and well adjusted. Yes. And of course, this is a paradox that Gelatinous Rube, James Streisand, I think, has pointed out, that RPGs are a fundamentally social game, and they just, through some cruel, ironic twist, are primarily engaged in by people who are poorly socialized and have a poor concept of etiquette and social grace and
hygiene.
Yeah, I'm sorry, you have to not be like a sour grapes loser to engage with these games correctly.
One example of PvP.
Before you do that, Mike, we did have another super chat real quick.
And we did say that I would talk and then Harmony would talk unless she has.
No, I already did. That was a while back.
Okay,
we're well beyond that.
Sleepy.
Tag, thank you so much for the $5. Tag says, this is why referee is so important. It sets the expectation that the game requires arbitration. Great stream so far. Thank you. Do you guys agree with that? Do you think that the term referee necessarily implies that there could be players at odds with each other?
I mean, you will need the referee for adjudicating through the fog of war. But I think I would love at a certain level for everyone to be a referee at least once, understand how the principles of it work, and then you could just go off. Like, you don't even need the referee anymore if everybody understands the rules. That would be the dream, right? Where everybody has got the fundamentals down, and there's no, well, I did this and you did that. It's like, let the dice ref it out because everybody knows like what the presuppositions are.
And before we continue, I kind of want to look at some of the responses that Dundermoose got on X, because Dundermoose had a tweet. Let's just share your tweet about it. Am I doing it right? I'm doing it right. All right.
Yeah,
cool.
You're doing it right.
Yeah, I'm learning how to use basic, easy software.
While you're doing that, I need to take a ridiculous thing off.
Oh.
It would have been great if you had a thick red curly head of hair under the wig.
Under it, yeah.
Mustache,
a second wig.
I was concerned about how long we were just going to appropriate gingers. But,
sorry, gingers.
I would never voluntarily redhead myself.
No.
I think we had. So we asked a lot of people on X what they think about PvP in their games, and I think a very interesting response here was from Grim Schneider. He says, I think you should have a vague line between faction PC and dungeon PCs. Faction PCs run factions and countries and go to war with each other. Dungeon PCs form parties. Factions hire parties to go on small-scale adventures. Eventually, dungeon PCs can become faction PCs, hence the vague line. I thought that was a very interesting response we got to that, and something I don't really think about often, like separating PCs. I don't know. Do you guys have thoughts on that one?
I think it kind of gets to the where you start off. What's your division line as far as what do you think Dungeons and Dragons is. Because if you think Dungeons and Dragons is a small party that sticks together through thick and thin, like an episode of Star Trek: The Next Generation, right? Like the spotlight stays on them, and they are thrown up against the world and the bad guys in the world. That is going to flavor your taste or your ability to process these concepts. And most of the people I've been playing with lately have moved away from that concept, have moved more into these Broasar ideas of, a faction of one, and one-to-one time, and like everybody's doing their own thing. Sometimes we go out together, and like there's great cooperation that can happen. I've had players in Trilopulus loan me money so that I can level up, and then I owe them money, right? But like one of my favorites, where it just came out of the blue, Bob Stevens, he's got a huge character. The guy's really strong. He's riding this rocket sled. Like, picture a rocket sled from Flash Gordon. We're all on it. We come up against these oh shoot, I'm gonna forget what they're called. They're fire newts, the fire newt magus, and they charm person. And Bob immediately adopted that role play and was like, all right, I'm controlled, I'm on their side. And so he tipped it. My old wizard fell off the sled immediately. He tried to crash it into the wall of the cavern. People are wrestling with him. We get to bust out the grappling rules. Eventually, my wizard didn't die when he fell off the thing. He cast sleep on the whole sled, and everyone went to sleep, and it coasted to a stop. But like, the ability to turn on a dime and role play that PvP, we found it fascinating and we loved it. But I can see why some of the responses to this thing, if your mindset is on that conventional play and you don't have the frame of reference of the other older style of play that Jeff Rowe has, for the last 4 years now, been sharing with the world, I can see why you're like, oh, well, we have an objective and we're trying to get to it. And PvP is just going to stop us and stall us. We're gonna fight each other, and we're not going to get towards the next plot point we need to. Right. So I think the first hurdle is to ask ourselves, what framework are you coming from? And maybe not judge somebody who is completely against it because it just doesn't even fit in their head yet. They got a square hole and you got a round block. You know what I mean?
There has to be reaction rolls. There has to be possible PvP, and you need to track your time very effectively with 1-to-1. If you can do these three things, you're going to see that, first of all, your game's not going to look anything like what it did before you adopted these principles. But you're going to see that when you activate the world, when you hit that on switch, your players are going to keep the you don't have to worry about not hitting the DM, player arcs, right? Because at that point, the players themselves are going to create the game, and you get to slide back into that referee role. And that it's just such a superior version of the game. Like, I can't go back and even like understand where people are coming from anymore. And so I post on Twitter, I'm like, oh, this is a thing that I found in my games. And then 100 posts about how that's not possible. And that is, you can't do that. And now I understand why we have like a very hard heel turn from the basic expert.
So I was in a conventional game where it came up though, right? Like, I'm playing with my dad bros from church, my brother-in-law, and it's 5e, and he's min-maxed his character, and he wanted to take on me, and we, our DM has set up this whole world, this whole homebrew. He wanted to take on the other two PCs, and like the DM gave us his home base to start it, and it has a fighting pit. And so we were like, all right, let's go. Let's see how this goes. And we just kind of did a quick battle royale in our home base there to see who could whoop on who. And it was fun. And it wasn't, it wasn't like in the middle of the mission we started arguing and came to cross purposes. Like, this is what we're going to do right now. So it can work in and as was pointed out earlier in the chat, it doesn't always have to be combat. Like the thief who sneaks around behind the ogres while everyone's fighting them and finds their treasure pile and skims just a bit off the top for themselves. That's kind of PvP. It's not really fighting, and maybe they're never aware of it. How do you guys feel about those kind of little mini betrayals?
this sort
do
of
you
thing
want to hear
actually
something
just
controversial?
happened.
Oh, go
go
ahead.
ahead.
Okay,
No, I
just a
insist.
quick
I
point.
insist. I insist.
Well, Mike first and then Danger.
He's Canadian. You can't. You
I
gotta
just wanna
go,
make a
Mike.
quick controversial statement. You're right. He is too polite. Critical Role actually does a very good job with PvP. First and foremost, back when they were like introducing everyone to the hobby, they did an entire episode of player versus player where they all got into an arena and then they just set all their classes against each other and they duked it out. It was awesome. The Bard won at the end. So they
Bard won?
opened the door. Yeah, the Bard won. They opened the door to the idea of player versus player, but that's just like direct conflict. But if you watch like some of the episodes, I know it's not for everybody, but if you like watch the episodes, Matt Mercer, the dungeon master for that game, will pull players aside, have private conversations with them to help them adjudicate the secrets that they're trying to advance. And sometimes those goals are not aligned with the rest of the, like there's like 7 or 8 people at the table. And so I know that they catch a lot of slack, but as far as like player versus player principles, like the idea of like fog of war, combat amongst players, and achieving personal objectives at ends with the other players, Critical Role does a pretty good job with it.
All right.
But anyway, my Danger.
Yeah, I was where was I? Broke my stream of thought there.
Sorry, buddy.
Oh, just
Question
that
was Tiny Betrayals.
Tiny Betrayals. This happened very recently. So I run a game, and then I have another game that I play in, and I'm not going to turn this into a story time about what happened in the campaign because I hate those. But but a
It's
character
like when a kid
died.
says, "Can I tell you about my dream?" And you're like, "Oh."
I pity my poor wife. I get home from a D&D night and I'm like, oh, so this happened, and oh, that's nice. But so a friend of mine, he got killed at the hands of another player. Context is irrelevant, and we go and we look over his character sheet to loot him, and it's just full of stuff. It's like written in the margins, like all these magic items and all these things that he was playing a thief. He had looted over the courses of like 2.5 years of play. Is just all this trash, all this stuff that he had been like DMing the DMing the dungeon master, like, oh yeah, I want to check for that, I want to take that. And so we look at his sheet, we're like,
Pete would approve.
it's like I was wondering where my ring of whatever went. Like, what the hell? Like, and so this is I guess this is part of my position, is just that this sort of characters against characters, whether it's in combat or not in combat, is not only is it okay, it's just an assumed thing that will happen in a sufficiently long campaign with characters who are actually allowed to enact agency. It's just part of the way that we've always played, and so I'm always happy to shill it, as not only is it not going to blow up your group, it's not going to make all your friends hate each other, it's not going to make everyone walk away cross. It will enhance the game if that's on the table, if these sorts of treacheries, if these sorts of surprises and secrets and long-standing motives, if those are available, it will make the game better. It'll make it more exciting. And we've been playing for like 15 years. It works. You can do it. None of us hate each other.
Right. You can't do that.
Although there is,
maybe we're just Canadian. Maybe we just get along so well. Maybe we can be nice to each other. I see K Dolo here. He's never tried to play a game in Los Angeles. Maybe it's just because Canadians are better at being good to each other than Americans are.
Right on. The thing that was so funny to me was when our caller, our guy that's like most responsible for getting everybody organized and going into the dungeon, like the guy who's like going to make sure we all get the ruby and get out safe. He's a ranger. It's played by Brigadine, and sometimes the thieving can make you madder than someone killing your character. So Slippery Pete has a hat of disguise, much like myself. And like one time he tried to show up and it was like, oh no, the thief isn't here. It's a fighter, And then it turned out he was actually just disguised himself as a fighter. Well, his character, the thief, actually was off building an orphanage out of the goodness of his heart. And so he rolled up a new character, a wizard named what was it, Petrov, the prestidigitator? And so we got this wizard. He's a level 1 wizard, right? So he doesn't cast any spells the whole time. We go through this fog room, and like I found a bunch of jewels in the stomach of some creature that we'd killed, and they got pickpocketed. And Brigadine was so mad because he was sure that the wizard was actually Slippery Pete in disguise and that he had pickpocketed me in the fog room. And he went to choke him. And in D&D, in first edition, you have subdual damage, where you can do damage to a person that doesn't kill them; it knocks them out. But a certain percentage of it,
A little bit goes through.
will be lethal. And a wizard has no hit points. And so even though he tried to subdue him, he just snapped his neck. And then it was like, oh crap, I've just done an evil act. You know, he had a spell book, and he really was a wizard. He just happened to name him Petrov. And so now it was like, oh crap, I need to get on my Pegasus and fly back to town and resurrect this guy. So it cost him even more money to bring him back. Nobody saw it coming. He was just so mad. He was like, I'm going to lay hands on this man, because little petty thieves or thieveries, you know, add up the PvP. I'll tell you what, I don't know if he liked it, but he was immersed and engaged.
I want to hear some of
do you guys-
Harmony's PvP takes, because we've all like shared some experiences that we've had.
Yeah.
What's going on in your 5e game?
Well, oh no, I'm gonna look so bad here. I'm gonna tell it anyway. All right, so I have a couple different worlds that I run, and there are a few groups. There are several groups in each world. Actually, I used to run one of them, and now other players are running it, and I'm a player. And we started one group with the idea of we're going to make the other group's life as hard as possible. We're going to so we started a group of like, so they call them in our world the arachno-capitalists. It's a silly homebrew thing. They're spider people. So we started a group of spider people, and I'm a spider person, right? And so we travel across the world, and we're going to try to wipe out another town of spider people, because there's nothing spider people hate worse than other spider people, right? And so we travel like halfway across the world, and we're making problems for the other group. It's more intra-party PvP, which we haven't really talked about yet, but I love intra-party PvP. So we travel across the world, and the most horrible PvP act I did was I gave one of my players from another game. He wanted to from another game in the same world. He was a player in the other group. He was going to DM for this group now. He didn't know anything about this group. He didn't know what was going on the other side of the world. And he came in to be a DM. And the worst act of PvP I committed was not informing him that this was the evil group. And so he set up like a death cult, right? And by the end of it, the death cult was looking at us like, hey, you're going a little far.
Let him run with it.
Yeah. So that wasn't super PvP, but I mean, we're doing intra-party PvP. We're going from one party to the other, setting up like massive, horrible things in the world to just screw with the other guys.
How many DMs do you have in your campaign?
I think almost every player has DM'd a little bit of it at this point. So we have 2 times per week it meets. We have one group that plays on Wednesdays and one group that plays on Sundays. And I think we've had like 5 different DMs for that group.
How do you do it? How do you do that? Because I think that would lend itself really well to PvP, even if it is intra-party. Like, I cannot get my players to like jump on board.
It's wildly experimental. And it's worked out very well in some respects or some aspects. And in some aspects, it's kind of been a little bit weird, but
Like
as a general
curve.
rule, there's a learning curve. As a general rule, we've said, anybody can canonize anything when they're the DM, and we just sort of let it evolve. And right
think-
now, I am no longer running the game. I am a player in both groups. And
That's awesome.
yeah, so that wasn't really a super PvP experience. It was intra-party. But in my other games, I haven't actually had a real PvP scenario. Yeah, I have. Never mind. That's a lie. And in my other games, I was running Ravenloft a few years back when I had like a PvP scenario breakout. It turned out to be like the best and most memorable part of the campaign.
Right. Yeah.
When someone was corrupted and turned on the group, and they were like, "Dude, you got to go," and he left, and he ended up like corrupting like an entire town, and they did some real nasty stuff to each other. But the PvP parts, the parts where the players really turned on each other, were the most memorable parts of the campaign.
Yep.
Which at the time, a lot of times this stuff feels bad and players don't know what to do and it's dramatic. But in a year, when you think back on that campaign, a lot of times that's the part that you remember. And that's the part that you'll talk about. You'll be like, dude, you remember when you stole my when you stole my Hand of Vecna? And then I don't know where I was going with that. But those are like the parts that you remember, I think.
I can just there's lots of campaigns, there's lots of games that I can never. I mentioned to one of my players, I'm like, yeah, remember when we did this game and we did this, and they're like, oh no, it's like total blank out. But when I say something like, you remember when Bill bailed on the party to go rob and murder that shopkeeper while you guys were busy in combat, and they're like, yeah, I remember that. Wow,
Right.
like it's like those sorts of things are real spikes of excitement that stick out in the memory.
And
It's,
that's one of the things about
Bill's
conventional
character
play.
got executed for that, by the way. Let's just be clear here.
That's one of the things about conventional plays. I feel like the DM works so hard and you burn yourself out trying to make memorable moments for your players, and it doesn't work. They remember the crap that they came up with that either went crazy or went spectacularly disastrous or whatever. Like the stuff that comes from them is what they remember. Not your
this is
blood,
why-
sweat, and tears that you built into it.
This is why I've really resisted putting miniatures on the table. In our other game where I'm a player, miniatures and tactical combat is a huge part of it. I can basically guarantee that every session there's going to be a huge set piece battle, and we're going to get to engage with the combat rules in a really nitty gritty way. But that experience is different than the role playing game. In a lot of ways, it's like at any given moment in one of those sessions, I'm going to put the role playing part of my brain on pause, and I'm going to play a tactical board game.
Yeah.
And then when the combat is over, then I'm going to switch the role playing part of my brain back on. Because when you have miniatures on the table, I feel like you remember where you remember the map, you remember where the miniatures are, you remember the clever maneuver that you pulled off. You don't remember what the characters were saying or why they were there or what they were doing. It pulls. I'm increasingly like a theater of the mind exclusivist in terms of how I run the game. I wanted to ask Harmony about the multiple GM thing. Something that Jeffro, I don't remember. I've been trying to keep up with the chat here, and way back, Jeffro was saying something to the effect of, if you want to maintain the consistency of the game world milieu, you have to say no to your players a bunch, and you have to kind of, in order to maintain an internal consistency, you have to like tighten the reins up a bit. You can't just hand over all this player freedom about the game world. And this is something that we've run into as a group here. This is a problem that we've run into with my own circle in real life, is that there's three of us who GM, and we all play in each other's games and whatnot. And we've thought about doing like a single shared campaign world where we're all GMing. And I was explaining the one-to-one time and the calendar syncing and stuff. And it's like, yeah, we could all do just like one big campaign with multiple GMs and multiple active parties. And inevitably, actually, where the hang up occurs is that each of us have radically different visions for what an engaging campaign world looks like. And and so the world that I conceive of is going to be completely different than the world that the other guy and then the third guy think up, to the point where if we tried anything that where we tried to if we tried to collaborate and all work within the same milieu, compromises would have to be struck. And I feel like we would very quickly arrive at kind of a gray mush, a gray goop, generic, kind of flavorless campaign setting. And I'm wondering, how do you avoid that? How do you avoid regressing to the mean when you
Man.
have multiple creative inputs going
I'm not sure if I used any specific method for that. I think it was more people had, we kind of knew that we were going to have a setting that wasn't like going to be a generic fantasy setting, and it wasn't going to be marketable or anything, but it didn't matter because it wasn't for anybody but us. So you had people inputting different things, but also people had control over different aspects of the world. Like, for example, my players took control of gods. They were gods in the setting. So the god of the god of magic got to put in restrictions on magic for everybody. The god of nature got to choose a lot of how the natural world developed. The god of, I don't know, I can't remember now what all we did. But we had a lot of different separated roles over the setting, if that makes sense. But really, it got strange because there were a lot of wars that took place between players. I say between players, but mostly it was between one player versus himself because he had factions that hated each other. But there was another PvP war that took place as well. But I mean, that wasn't the question. I'm sorry. I just kept trying to relate it back to PvP. I think we separated the roles on that. Also, we kind of knew that what we came up with wasn't going to make perfect sense, and we were okay with that.
on.
We knew that there was going to be some silly stuff, like
I think like it could go either direction. Like you could get like gray goo, vanilla D&D, or you could get like the weirdest mishmash of like chaos and like true gonzo, because like one
I gotta
Or
draw a
Muppets.
distinction between gray goo and vanilla, because gray goo is flavorless and without character. But of course,
Right.
vanilla is the greatest flavor of ice cream ever
it
conceived
is
of.
really delicious.
It is the the default, or like the baseline can be really excellent in its own right. Where I think things suffer is when they lack character entirely, as opposed to simply a really solid expression of something familiar and perhaps well tread.
Harmony, can I get you to put the Twitter back up? And I want to get you guys reactions to some more of the feedback I got.
I love complaining about the internet. Let's go.
Yeah.
Well, there was a response by someone named BA Kid. If you could find that one.
I see him around.
This guy right here.
Yes.
This one.
All
right.
And at first they said they couldn't understand or relate to people who have fond memories of diplomacy. And so I kind of asked about that. I was like, well, what's the missing piece? Like, why can't you relate? And he's like, it's fine. I think it's a he. Fine in theory in any situation where betrayal by a DM. I'm going to read my own because it's popping up. He basically doesn't like the tension between punishing players who betrayed you in the last game and characters that his own PC would trust. Like he said the difference between role play and metagaming, kind of the thing I was talking about earlier. Like, let's say you're playing diplomacy and Larry played France last time and betrayed you, and now this game he's playing Austria-Hungary, and you're like, well, I want to sock it to Austria-Hungary because Larry's playing them. That's a metagame reason to do that. Whereas in the actual reality of the game, you might still mistrust France, but you wouldn't mistrust them based on who's playing them. And I was like, well, what's the difference between a player who can enjoy each game for what it is and not get mad at Larry between games, and one who's like holds on to that? And he said basically it's if Larry's being a jerk. So I wonder what your guys' take on that is. This betrayal.
I think it's a dichotomy that you have to address, because it is an issue, but it shouldn't be such a big issue that if it becomes such a big issue, you don't want to play with those kind of people. So there is this idea that, like, you know, like somebody who's really good at playing Risk or, I don't know, Monopoly or whatever, like if they're really good at it, you know that you have to like challenge that player, do your best outside of the game to like win, because this player is really good at strategy or whatever. But when you killed my character in Moonshine, in the very next planet that we went to, we were allies. Like, we tried to form. I did end up killing you, but the goal was for us to.
I gave you too much information, right?
Right. The goal was for us to work together, right? And so, like, I knew eventually you probably were going to kill me, and I had to like make my moves, and like your pro play made me want to like step up my game on the player level. But in game, my character was like, I'm going to work with you as long as it works for me, right? As long as our goals are lined up. And I was willing to make that sacrifice, knowing that eventually you're going to turn that revolver on me.
Well, that's a perfect example to bring up. Not the first guy, but my second guy. That was a moment where I had to choose between metagaming and role play, because basically what happened, if you guys didn't read the session reports, and you should go to Jeff Rowe's blog and read all this stuff, because it's the cutting edge, guys. I'm telling you, this is where it's happening. But my character was kind of playing both ends. I'd been deputized to try and bring down a crime ring, but I'd gotten in good with the criminals, and I hadn't really decided who I was going to jump with. And so I was playing both ends at the exact same time. And the problem was, good old Scudderfer Mike put me under the truth serum when I got into his spacecraft. So I got truth drug. And so now I'm like, okay, they asked me, can we trust you? So what do you do in that situation where you've been playing both the cops and the crooks and against each other? And he said, can we trust you? And I was just like, I don't know. I haven't decided who I'm going to betray yet.
You can if you want to.
That's right. And
I won't stop you.
The DM, like Jeff Rowe, just busted up laughing when I said that. And it became obvious, like, this guy may be an asset or a liability. We don't know. One of the side effects of that truth drug was that you go to sleep after a couple minutes. So I was like, I'm fading. If you guys have any more questions, now's the time. They asked one more question. I went to sleep, and they were like, yeah, he's not waking up. So like that was a time where I chose to have fun in the moment of role playing instead of trying to win the game. Right? Like I knew that this is not going to be good if they know that, but I had to respect Mike's play, because he put me in a situation where if I was playing by the rules of the game, I would have to give him the information he was asking for. And so it was kind of like he won when the needle went in my arm, and I just had to play it out, right? So, but not every player is going to have that mindset. And how do you know when you're putting a group together?
Another example is like when Harmony approached my character about, I want you to just take care of this blue alien monster. No big deal. I mean, obviously the player's like, okay, something's weird about this. I don't know who this monster is. Why are they a cute monster? But why are they like staying in my house? Like, why do I have to watch this monster? But the principle of it is like my character was trying to win these PCs over. He's gonna do favors for them, and so I exposed myself a little bit, because I was like, well, let's see where this goes. Let's see, if she turns. Let's see if I get eaten. I don't know, but it's better to like. There is going to be some metagame, right? In PvP, there's absolutely no way to like prevent it to a certain extent, because my feelings get hurt just a little bit whenever my character dies. Like I get either mad or like I don't know, an antagonistic feeling when my character dies. I get really excited. But like it is,
and there's also guilt, as the one who betrayed you the first time around. Like there is guilt. Like it's just a game and you're playing, but like you are playing with real strong emotions. And
Yeah,
like
the
I feel like I
emotions are
might have been
coming
a
out.
little more fair
Yeah.
to you in the next game because of that, because I felt bad that I had been such an absolute dirty dog to the whole team in the first one.
Think about Night Danger's example where his friend went and got the sword and came back in. He was like, rah, right? He was fully in his feels, right? Having a good time, but like, like that
Chop
lends
your
itself
hands
to
off.
like really role playing well. And so I think that if anything, PvP like is better than conventional play because you get to feel that, So.
Yeah. But
It
there are
it
people that
allows for
can't
the
take
full
it.
spectrum of character expression, of human expression.
Yes.
If
The
I'm not
positive and the
allowed,
negative emotions.
if I'm not allowed to experience a murderous rage, am I even really playing a human?
Right. Exactly.
Like these are. I think that a good so on the BA kid here, which makes him sound like a Western character. Oh, down in Oklahoma, there's a BA kid.
A BA kid.
The BA kid here, that you hear all, there used to, I don't know, maybe around like 2008 to 2013, there was all these memes and all these jokes about how Monopoly ruins friendships. How X board game has ended more friendships than whatever. And I think this is the same phenomenon, is again, back to the social grace thing. Are you able to turn off the part of your brain that takes the game like personally?
Yeah.
A Monopoly has never ruined one of my friendships. Diplomacy has never ruined one of my friendships. It has made me look very sly at one of my friends the next time we play Diplomacy and think, you're on thin ice. I'm going to be watching you closely.
Yeah.
But it's not. There's not antipathy there. There's just an observation of like patterns of behavior, consistent strategies. Like I'm just playing the game, right?
So,
But it can end friendships.
Oh,
Go ahead,
it totally can.
Yeah.
And I
You're
think that
gonna
I think to have it not end friendships is a skill, but it's also just a personality type, and it's not necessarily guaranteed to be a personality type that's shared by all people. Like
Yeah.
a good example, this applies to lots of things. Not everyone can play Theater of the Mind combat because some people legitimately they have aphantasia, they can't visualize, right? Like they struggle to form the image in the mind, and so they need these references for it, right? Not all types of play are accessible to all types of people, and that's fine. I'm not someone to say there's no right way to play, but I will say that there's a variety of types of play, and not everyone likes all types of play.
So
Is that what you were
I
going to say,
just want
Harmony?
to say, no, I just want to say that I think BA Kid is exactly right. And if my real life friends are watching this, you should know it really hurts my feelings when we have a new player join the group and the first thing you tell them is don't trust Harmony. That's like really, really hurtful.
What
And
did you do to
ruins my
deserve
play
that?
experience.
What did you do
Nothing.
to deserve that? Oh, that's the next panel. That's the next show. We're gonna bring
Right.
all your friends on, and we're gonna ask them, what did Harmony do to deserve this?
to deserve this?
Okay, so I was going to go to
So-
Noble Shield next, but like I feel like the topic has
Okay.
kind of gone to the most extreme reaction that I got. That's stinking Kevin. Moldvay zigzagged. R gets stuffed. And this
Oh, I
is a
love that
serious
guy.
one. Yeah,
Love that
he's
no.
hilarious, but
I've
he had a
lost it. I'm
heartbreaking
sorry.
story.
This one.
Here it is. He had a friend
Yeah,
want me to
actually.
share?
wow, I remember that one.
Yeah.
Good lord.
So he
That's,
had a friend self-harm at the table because they wouldn't immediately return to town to get his character resurrected after a PvP incident. And it went on. There were some other issues going on there. His friend's in prison now. I said, do you keep in touch? I write to him in prison. And then my next question, I felt so awkward asking this because so much pain was going on. But if you scroll down a little bit, I says, it begs the question, though, not to be indelicate, but it does beg a certain question. Do you still do PvP in D&D? And he
Yeah,
says
would
it
that, like,
hasn't come up, but
ruin it?
I'd allow it. I would probably
Mm.
talk to the person separately and let them know that they might damage real world friendships by doing it. Maybe treat it like subduing damage against dragons. So we talked about that already. We talked about like the PvP opens you to a wider range of emotions, and it can be way more compelling than what you've done before. But it also is a gatekeeping thing that people that aren't into it can't get past. And then there is like, this is probably super rare, but to see someone get so upset about a character death that they self-harm at the table. And I've seen people rage quit out of these kind of games and stuff. So
I
what are
had a
your
player
thoughts
rage
on that?
over PvP. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'll talk about one of my patrons. I presented the idea. Okay, you're gonna be the guy who runs the Assassin's Guild, and you're also like control of like the spy network. So you're an NPC. You're high level. You're not going to be showing up to the dungeon. You're not going to go get the ruby. You're going to feed me your orders, and you're going to help fill out the world and make an impact, right? And I was like, you're not the main character. And so he's trying to plot against the Baron, a wizard. He's got like he's got his fingers in every pot, trying to spy and send assassins against all of these like high level NPCs. But they united in one goal to destroy him because he made too many enemies. And through the fog of war, they were communicating in the back channels, and they invaded his town and they destroyed his thieves or his assassins guild, killing him. And he was furious, and he was yelling at everybody in the chat, like in the large chat with like 14 people, about how, this game must be for losers because you guys have no life. You're able to spend like all this time playing constantly. And, he's really spiraled out of control.
Scorched earth.
And right. And it was like really strange because his whole shtick was, I'm going to kill everybody. But when they united against him to kill him, he genuinely, like as a real person, was mad at us enough to leave the group, and he doesn't talk to anybody anymore. So
these stories are really sad. And I think if you are going to run a game and you allow this sort of thing, even if it's not the expectation, but more of an allowance, then I think you need to make sure you are running with people who are generally mentally stable.
Yeah. This is a huge thing, is that like these games require, I'm gonna say it again, they require socialization. They require you to be well adjusted and well socialized. And if you're not, and lots of people aren't for a variety of reasons, and there's no condemnation or spite towards lacking that socialization, but if you don't possess it, you're going to have a difficult time engaging with these games to the fullest extent. And it feels kind of sucky to have to say it like that, because it really just boils down to not everyone can play at this level, but in an entirely non-hostile and like gatekeeping fashion, just because frankly it's self-selecting. If you are not equipped to engage with this particular type of play, whether that's in an RPG or in a double-blind competitive war game or something like diplomacy or something, if you're not equipped to handle that, you will self-select out of the hobby. You will leave. Right. You won't play again. You'll rage quit. And that's just kind of it. It's I don't want to be a downer, but like it's a self-correcting issue.
There's value in not liking a game and backing out of it gracefully. Maybe just ghosting, that's an option. It kind of sucks, but like just never showing up again is okay. But with PvP, you're gonna limit the range of that happening, because people are, like we said, they get really emotional, because when we're looking at like every player at the table, collectively speaking, we're all smarter than one guy, the DM, by himself. He's not able to bring as much heat as all, like every angle, every which way you look, somebody's got a plot. And they're advancing it and they're working together against you if you're not good at being social, like Night Danger's saying. And so the intensity ratchets up to such a point where you hear people talk about, oh, well, PvP is just a recipe for, ruining friendships. And it's because that dynamic of bowing out of a group gracefully doesn't become an option when you're like,
Well, now to be
Dunder.
fair, I think there's also the Murphy's Law situation here where people quietly and politely saying, this isn't for me, especially if it's advertised right out the gate. If you say at the start of a campaign, at a brand new game with new players, you say, this is what's on the table, this is what we're up to. That's going to be like people quietly bowing out or simply choosing not to engage in the first place at all does not make social media attention. It doesn't get talked about on Reddit. It doesn't get talked about in YouTube videos. Nobody tells horror stories about the guy who said, this isn't really for
thanks.
me. I think I'm going to play Skyrim. Like that doesn't get press. And so then your negative outliers become the topic of discussion.
that's true.
Have you had experiences with this, Harmony?
Oh, yes.
I've had a few people bow out of my games when their characters have died, but it's not the norm for me. And I don't think it has ever happened as a result of PvP. I allow PvP in my games, but I don't encourage it. I tell my players, I'm not going to police you. I expect you to be an adult about the consequences of your actions.
Yeah.
And if you guys don't want a game with PvP, it is on you to police each other. Because I'm not putting those guardrails in place. You can certainly do it if you want to. Now, I normally do not have it occur at all within the same party. I have it occur like from one party to another party. But I mean, sometimes they just mess with each other. But I've never really had that situation happen over PvP. But like I said, I have had players quit when their characters have died, but not many. I have people bow out of games remarkably rarely. And I'm quite proud of that. I have many of the same players over many years. So
Rock on.
I've only ever had one player bow out, and we had to boot one guy from the team. But the bow out was just my brother because we were running Call of Cthulhu, and he doesn't like mysteries, and so he's like, "Hey, when you run sword swinging adventure games again, I'll be back." And that we had to boot a guy because he was an antisocial weirdo. But that
doesn't really happen much for me.
Any advice
I do
for
have
players? Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Harmony.
Oh, I was just going to tell a quick story. I have a guy who hasn't been showing up to games lately and has been ghosting us all because he got a new baby, but like he's known us much longer. So, I mean,
listen. All I'm saying is that I continue to run consistently when I have my baby. But
babies are
I'll
so
pass that info
immature.
along, right?
But like all I'm saying, it sounds like a skill issue. Sounds like you could bully your player about this.
I don't know if you want someone that's not getting 4 hours of sleep that touch in a night.
Just
getting shallow sips, an hour here, 2 hours there. Maybe they can take a while off of the game.
You work out a shift system. My wife would sleep from 8 until about 2 a.m. and I would sleep from 2 a.m. to 8 a.m. That was like the rotation.
That's pretty good. Right. So what you were saying, Dundermoose, tips for I'm interested here in tips for DMs. Like, how do you run this type of game for someone who never has? Like, what would you advise people to do if they want to kind of dip
let's
their
do
toes
players first.
Players first. Okay.
Players first, and then
All right.
DMs. Like, if you're a player, and you get the idea there's some shenanigans going on, and you're worried about your ability to socialize and stuff. Like, how do you what should their approach be if they notice there's some PvP going on? Like, let's use the classic example. You're in a party, and you notice that the thief. You got a hunch that the thief may be skimming off the top. What's a good way to handle that? What's a bad way to handle that? What should you as a player do with that information?
The bad way to handle it is to cry and leave. That is bad. I think the best way to handle that is first and foremost, when you make your character, I tell this to all my players whenever I introduce anyone new to the game. Don't make a character backstory. Write down 3 goals. One that you could achieve in a month, one that you could achieve in a year, and one that you want to achieve before you die.
I like
Write
that.
down those 3 goals so that anytime you don't know what your character would do, you can look at those goals and say, what course of action would bring me closer to one of these 3 things? And so the thief is skimming from the party. What you should not do is think, man, Scuddifer is a jerk for having his thief skim from the party. What you should think is, my character has these objectives, my character has these motivations, so how does the thief skimming impact that? Do I want to get in on it? Do I want to try and blackmail him into giving me a cut? Do I want to start skimming myself, and then if I get caught, blame him? Like if a discrepancy comes up, do I want to blame him? Do I want to confront him directly? But it should be motivated by the character, which is easiest to handle through these goals. And the benefit of this is that it immediately puts a point of abstraction between what you do about the situation and the situation itself. Because now you're not thinking in terms of me and Scuddifer. I'm now thinking in terms of my character and Scuddifer's character. And that abstraction makes it easier to not be petty about it, to not be personal about it. It reminds you that you are playing a game. And also, it's going to produce significantly more dynamic and interesting outcomes than simply, I killed him! Unless, of course, one of your goals is punish evildoers and thieves, in which case, I killed him might actually be a legitimate course of action.
Put
And
Brian's comment. The bad way is to strangle the magic user.
It's never a bad day to strangle a magic user. I haven't played a magic user in 7 years, and I won't ever again. I'm a fighter player. I play fighters exclusively.
Paladin for me. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
I mean,
no,
I think
neutral human fighter. I'm a Conan player to my heart. Never anything else.
All right, Harmony next, then Mike.
Yeah, I think there's absolutely a good way and a bad way to handle a PvP incident. And really, you want to think, what would my character do in this situation? If you're a lawful good paladin and you've found the rogue skimming off the top, maybe you put a knife to his throat and you threaten him and you say, we are not going to do that in this party. And if I see you doing it again, I'll kill you or something. Maybe you do that. That might be what your character would do. I mean, it makes sense. But I mean, the wrong way to handle it would be making a video crying about it on YouTube. Right, Mike, your turn.
Masterfully done.
So I'm of course I'm gonna echo a little bit about what they said. Role playing, if you're role playing, if you are playing your character and you're in it, right? Like you're at the table, you are in this moment. I don't think it's going to be hard for you to have fun with the PvP. If you're thinking about it in terms of like, this is a game and, you know, this player over here, I'm upset about it. Think about this. Why don't you get mad at the dungeon master when he has 4 bandits attack you? It's the exact same principle. The dungeon master is just another version of a player. He's sending things against you. Do I get angry when, you know, like, oh, he rolled a 2 on his reaction roll? Oh, you know, like, so I think about how, what would my character do I think that's a broad statement and it's really hard to get at the essence of that. But if you are role playing, one example, my bard character, when I was playing 5e, it was being antagonistic to a tiefling character, a sorcerer.
Deserved.
And I was like, you're a devil. Look at your horns. Like you have red skin. You're just like Asmodeus. You're here to corrupt us. And this character was really sensitive about his race. He was role playing a character who was raised by humans and like just randomly popped out as a tiefling, like something in the genetic line or whatever, and had a lot of insecurities. And I didn't know that, but his character was like saying, stop it. And my character is just blatantly racist against what looks to be a very evil thing. And so we just kept pushing each other and pushing each other. And then he's like, if you say one more thing, I am going to kill you. And I said, you know, like, well, your mother must have banged a devil or something like that. And we went to PvP. I thought that I could win that fight. I lost, actually. The sorcerer is a very powerful class.
Your mouth was writing checks that your ass could not cash.
So he brings me down to 0, which I was genuinely shocked. I was like, bards are really good. Like, I went down, and the cleric healed my character, stood between the two of us, and was like, look, you know, we need to get after our objective. That enemy of mine, the one who killed me, knocked me down to 0, later in the story became my best friend in the game because he got bullied by somebody else. And at that point, we'd already developed like dependency on each other. And so we had like slowly built this relationship. And I was like, I can say stuff about his race, but you can't. And then like we started fighting and defending each other. By the end of that campaign, we were best friends. And when we were role playing, it made my real life relationship with that guy even better. Like, he's one of my closest friends now. And so the ability for us to so I think that like there's something to this. If you can let go of control and give into the game and go theater kid, because I'm a big theater kid guy. I studied theater in college. Like, I love it. If you go all the way into your character and you actually are like trying to do what that character would do, you're going to find that it's so much easier to just let go and like see where the story goes. And you might be surprised at what comes out of it. So.
Right on. My take in that situation is, you know, I'm playing Bumblebar, who's a wizard. I want spells, I want books, I want scrolls. And so my take was when I know the thief is skimming, I'm going to cast invisibility on him so he can do it easier, saying, hey, any wands, any scrolls, any books you come across, bring them all Bumblebar's way, and we'll make this work, right? Why fight against it when you could profit from it? Again, depending on the character and their goals, though, as Night Danger says.
Yeah. And I think we're going to go ahead and get ready to wrap this up. But is there anything that you guys wanted to respond to in the chat? Because it's been like kind of flying by. We haven't been able to respond to anything. I think there was one comment like a ways back that I'm not even going to be able to find anymore. It was so far back. It was made by Jeffro. And I might actually be able to find it. Oh wait, I did. I found it.
Someone as harmful and controversial and as Jeffro in this chat room.
Right. Anyway, the harmful and controversial one says, the Stronghold game makes it possible for people to fight each other without losing their main character. Leaders tend not to die when they're leading blocks of troops. Right. I think that is something that we didn't really address. That
the Bronstein.
That was a really good way to make this work with PvP, because a lot of times people want to engage in subterfuge and to indirectly deceive or harm other player characters or their assets, but at the same time they don't want to lose their own character. I think Stronghold play and I think once you build up enough, and once the characters are able to control more than just their character, but they have like extra, but they have like
the 1 to 10 scaling. Like, there's a lot to this. Like, we didn't get into like mass combat, but 1 to 10 scaling is really important because it allows you to have like this massive army that you can just smash against somebody else, all the while like, you know, you're delivering your orders with your generals in the back. Like, yeah, there's a big part we didn't even touch on PvP, but.
Because I recently did a Bronstein, and one agent in that lost horribly. He got his forces decimated. But having running the ongoing weekly orders and pages, and then the 2 Bronsteins, we've had a couple characters who have been consistently able to engage in PvP, in hostile action, in scheming, in undermining, in treachery, and none of them have died yet.
Right.
They've managed. Actually, no, kid, that's not true. One guy got assassinated.
We've lost 3.
But most of them, they live to fight another day, and they live to
Right.
recover and try and rebuild. And it's actually the faction game has become so addictive for some of my players that one of them has made it his primary objective to take his existing adventurer level characters and as quickly as possible shovel all of his adventuring loot and treasure and resources into building more factions. So now he's running 3 factions simultaneously. He's running 3 factions at once right now, because every time he makes a character, if they start to have even a little bit of success, they start
Hiring troops.
men. They start taking land. They start purchasing a herd of cattle, that sort of thing. Like it's this infectious. At some point, I might have to talk about integrating the multiple levels of play right down from in the same ongoing campaign. We have Bronsteins, faction players, patron players, adventuring parties, solo gaming. All of this has all been happening synchronously, and it really does mean that there's a niche for every type of player. If you want to just show up and swing sword at orcs, you can do that. And if you want to be building a wizard's tower and animating goblin corpses, you can do that too. There's there's room for everything all within the same milieu.
One
but
at
that's
one
maybe
time.
a topic. That's another topic for another day.
How about we land this one? Let's go around the room. I'll let Harmony pick the order that we go in, and we gave our tips for how to play as PvPers. Tips for the DMs out there that are like, man, you guys got me curious. I want to try this. I don't want to step on any of the landmines that have been mentioned, right? But I want to juke it. I want to have that fun. I want to have that engagement and that guilt and that shame and that recrimination. So Harmony, who's going to go first and give our DM tips on how to run PvP in your D&D?
You are.
Oh, I am. Okay, great.
Yeah, I just rolled on it.
I'm only going to briefly mention this book again, Treacherous Play. It is absolutely free. You can get this online for free. I got it as part of a Humble Bundle, but you can get it for free. MIT puts a lot of stuff online, so we can get the link in the chat for later, or not the chat, but the description, if you want me to send that to you, Harmony. But when he talks about designing Treacherous Play, is chapter, I believe, 5 of the book. He has 5 recommendations. Number 1, relationships between players must be ambiguous. Like in soccer, you're either on team A or on team B. And so that's going to, decide, if you can kick an own goal, but it won't benefit you at all to do so. Right. In a PvP, in a treacherous play environment, there needs to be an ambiguous relationship between the players where you don't know if you can trust them or not. Number 2, players must be able to openly communicate with one another, whether that's going into the rooms or the chat rooms in a Discord or IMs on Twitter or whatever. They need to be able to talk to each other. The game must have interactions that require players to trust each other. There needs to be something that you have to do that you can't do on your own. You need someone else, or like a place where you need someone to watch your back. Play must be consequential. You have to be able to lose something if you are betrayed. It needs to matter to the world. And treacherous play must also take place within the rules of the game. The expectation of betrayal is necessary for it to be part of the contest of playing a treacherous game. So letting them know up front, this is the kind of game where these things can happen. If you know that ahead of time and you still want to play, it may still hurt, but maybe it takes out that. It lets people that are going to rage quit if that happens opt out. Of course, I don't know if any of us really knows that about ourselves until it happens, and you have to be faced with, am I going to throw a fit or am I going to take this, right?
Right.
So those are the advice from Treacherous Play by Marcus Carter. I am trying to get him on my channel. It's hard because he's in Australia. But I would say if they know ahead of time that this is a possibility and that anything that happens will be within the rules, like we're not going to let anyone cheat or go outside the game to try and get something to happen. It's got to be within. That's my advice.
And next is Night Danger. I rolled on it.
Oh gosh. Okay. Well, so we're giving advice on DMs handling this particular subject. Well, the first thing I would suggest is don't play with random strangers if you can help it. that would be my first thing, is to vet. The first and most important element of having any kind of cohesive group, whether that's a conventional game or a PvP game, is to have be able to social vet your players and make sure that they are stable, well-adjusted people. But then also, so that's the first step. The second step, once you have a good game and it's going, is to be what Alexander Macros would say, a judge, an impartial. Your job is simply to adjudicate relations. It is not my job to encourage you to steal from another party member. It's not my job to encourage you to do anything. It is just my job to maintain a consistent and stable game world wherein you can do whatever your character wishes to do. And then don't punish players for... Don't say things like, oh, no, don't split up. I don't want to have to keep track of all of them. Don't say things like if a player wants to DM you or message you, this is why I don't enforce a no phones at the table for my IRL game, because the caveat is you can touch your phone if you're messaging, if you're sending me something. Keep these channels open to allow stuff to happen. And then so don't play with weirdos. Don't stop people from doing cool stuff. Like don't be an arbitrary or restrictive GM. And then 3, and this is like just what has worked for me, which is be happy at the table. And I mean that like very literally, like you should be laughing at the things that the players want to do. You should be like sincerely engaging and like excited about what they do, because that's, especially admittedly if you're dealing with like someone who's socially awkward or is like kind of uneasy about these things, laughter and dude, that's incredible, those sorts of things are social reward structures that encourage and incentivize behaviors. And so you should be... This is one thing I will take from story games, from like specifically the original Apocalypse world, which is that you shouldn't be antagonistic to the players. You shouldn't be pulling your punches and making it easy for them, but you should be a fan of the players. You should be excited about what they're doing. You should be excited about what they are bringing to the table, and you should be encouraging that through good old-fashioned social cues.
All right, and I'm next, based on the roll. I think you guys gave excellent advice, both of you. I think PvP can absolutely enhance a game. However, the one thing I will add to that is I don't think it can enhance every game, and I don't think every group is up to it. And if you have a home game of people you've been playing with a while and you don't think they're the type to enjoy a world in which they can harm each other, and this is how they like to play, just kind of get along gang together, and that is okay. And you probably shouldn't be forcing this type of game on them. Now, you don't normally need to like force it. In my experience, I have groups that play nicely together with no PvP at all, not even like little things like the rogue skimming money or whatever. But I don't tell them this is a PvP game. I tell them you can if you want to. And that doesn't necessarily even just include the people in your party. There are other parties in the same world, because I run several parties in the same world one-to-one time. I have a couple different worlds I run. Like I said, I'm a player in one. But so I tell them, you can mess with other groups. You can do it indirectly. You can mess with the other party members indirectly or directly if you want. You just need to be an adult about your actions. That is the big thing I tell them. And I have groups where that's never going to happen. They're gonna do their standard Dungeons and Dragons adventuring, and they're never going to mess with each other. And that's okay. That is player choice. And I think it's more powerful in those groups that they do that. because they chose to do that. I didn't force them to play get along together. They wanted to. And I think that's important, but you shouldn't be forcing PvP in groups,
Right.
is basically what I'm trying to say. That's really the one thing I would add. Like, not all groups are up to it. All right, Mike.
You know, honestly, like listening to everything you guys have said, I don't think I could contribute anything more. I think you covered all the bases. You said everything very succinctly. Maybe just, you know, master the rules and be fair.
There we go. And I think we are about to end this stream. But before we do, does anybody have any ending statements? Also, plug your stuff. Show us where we can find you.
I just Mr. Max
We're all
was
on
asking
YouTube.
for Mr. Max was asking
yeah.
for links to the panelists' channels in the description box.
Oh, why didn't I do that? I'm the
Mr. Max
worst.
is highly astute and incredibly good looking, so obviously he noticed this right away. So I obviously on YouTube at Night Danger RPG, on Twitter at with Night Danger, where you can endure and suffer my online presence. That would be where I can be found. Scuddifer.
At Scuddifer_Mike at YouTube. You can follow me on X. There's, you know, really I'm just you know, goofing off and like commenting on other people's stuff on X. But if you like solo plays, you can check out my channel, because that's 90% of my content, aside from the whinging about Harmony Ginger's betrayals, is about solo gaming in old school RPGs. Dunder Moose.
Oh, it's me. Okay. I'm on x.com/D Dundermoose, all one word. I'm on the YouTubes as well. YouTube.com/@Dundermoose. And my final thoughts are that if you can swing it and it's cool with your players, I think you got to try this stuff. It may not work with conventional play. It may cause you more harm. This is not something you're going to want to do with most modules, for sure. But I think if you've got like a sandboxy type game going, and you can even if you're playing that way, just for one session, give some of your big bad guys to players and just say, we're going to meet at my house on Wednesday night and we're going to carve this place up. And it's not as hard as you think. Watch my channel for people giving their after action reports. It's mostly not even rules. It's mostly just people running around doing crazy stuff. And then the only times you've got to adjudicate is when like there's combat and stuff. Then you use your rule set. Also, as a DM, you're going to be the busiest person there. You're going to be the center of attention. Everyone's going to have instructions for you. You got to be running around, but you also absolutely will not know everything that's going on. But I have not found a more compelling way to play. I really enjoy it. And I feel closer. I don't know if in Gangbusters, did I betray you, Night Danger?
No, actually, I think I threatened you with physical violence, and then I warned you that if you didn't go my way, that I would leak precious intel to a rival newspaper. I think that was our last interaction. So we got along. Neither of us betrayed each other, and we got along just fine because I had extrajudicial force on my side.
I can't tell you guys viewing this the warmth that I feel for these people who have threatened and betrayed me. And, it does. It opens the game up wider, both positive and negative emotions. And when you can trust somebody and they don't have to, when they can betray you and they're still trustworthy, it makes that choice to be good mean more than it would if you were all just kind of swept along. So that's my take on it. And I really enjoyed being on this episode with you guys.
Yep. And just in case you're watching this on someone's channel who isn't mine, my channel is Harmony_Ginger on YouTube. I am at GingerBlast on Twitter. But because I think someone else is streaming this. Anyway, thanks, guys. It's been wonderful.
Not me. I'm technologically inept.
It's on my channel right now. I'm sure everyone that would have watched my channel is here, though.
Yeah.
All right. Bye, guys.
Bye, guys.